Everyone wants what they can't have. For example, Joe wants to be able to play soccer like Messi, and Santi wants to drive himself to school. Two things that will probably never happen. Everyone also has those things about themselves that they wish they didn't have, or could change. Some small insecurities or bad habits, but I just call these things annoying. They're stuck with us, and there's nothing we can do about it. For me, it's the way I talk, and maybe some of you can relate. I mean, seriously, has anyone ever taken a video of you, and then when they play it back, you hear your voice, and you're like, why do I sound like that? I feel like everyone has experienced this at least once, and it's awful, especially when talking is one of your biggest insecurities. Many of you know me as a strongly opinionated, loud and obnoxious student who likes to argue with anyone, especially Doc. And what can I say? I get a kick out of it. I developed this urge to argue as a defense mechanism for a way to hide my disorder. I don't like talking about this very much in front of people. It makes me uncomfortable because I see it as a personal fault or imperfection that restricts me from successfully interacting with other people. I stutter, and I find it very embarrassing, and I hate it. Friends and family tell me that dealing with my stutter has made me into the person that I am today, which is pretty great if you ask me. But no offense to any of you who do have a stutter, it really sucks. I first realized that I had a stutter in the 3rd grade. I was in Mrs. Hunt's class on the 2nd floor of Holy Spirit Catholic School. In a desk clump near the entrance to the classroom sat an 8-year-old, Diego Ampudia, who had no idea what was about to happen. I was arguing with my first friend at this new school, Santi. We were working on one of those annoying math packets that for some reason are still a thing in high school. I was trying to get it through his head that anything times 0 is 1. I was explaining how I had 2 older brothers who told me this was true, and as I was getting into the second portion of my argument, I suddenly stopped. I looked at Santi, who had a confused look on his face, because mid-sentence, with an open mouth, I just stopped. I forced myself to say the words that were still bouncing around in my head. My mouth began to deliver the same letter of the word that I was about to say, over and over. I started blinking rapidly, and after several abrupt noises, I was speaking again. I went home that day, still thinking about that moment in class. Not too worried, but confused. As I carried on with my day, and the weeks passed, I started noticing it more and more when I spoke to different people. I talked to my mom about it once it became a normal thing because small situations would unravel into a very big deal for me. I just couldn't get my words out. Turns out I had a stutter, and as a 9-year-old, this news wasn't more than a minor inconvenience. However, I didn't know how rapidly it would develop and affect me in the long run. As I grew older, I was put into more situations that required me to talk, and people started noticing it more and more. It was getting worse and fast. It was then that my mom put me into speech therapy. Every day in the 4th and 5th grade, and all throughout middle school, my speech therapist would pick me up from my classroom at about 11:15 and take me to the cafeteria where we would talk for about an hour. When I had to walk out of class, everyone would stare, wondering why. I was so embarrassed. My poorly hidden speech folder soon became the answers to my classmates' questions. People knew that I literally couldn't talk right, and the word got around. It made life harder, conversations last longer, and my self-confidence dropped dramatically. Little everyday situations became a big deal for me, and whenever I got nervous, the stutter would creep up on me. There are some situations where a stutter is very inconvenient to have, like during a soccer game, where split-second decisions are essential. Let me explain. On the soccer field, it's essential to be able to communicate effectively. Giving your teammates instructions is one of the most important parts of having a successful team. I'm sure most of you know where I'm going with this. Telling a player such simple commands like turn or pass became such a challenge for me. Whenever I tried to get it out, I would think, just say the word, but nothing but t-t-t, and that horrible feeling in my throat would come. I honestly thought it was pretty funny. Imagine trying to speak and not being able to. Okay, that sounded pretty dark, but I think I got my point across. Throughout most of my middle school life, this was as bad as it got. Just awkward situations and not so serious consequences. However, as time dragged on, I realized that people are ruthless. My stutter soon became a weakness that was exploited in any normal conversation. This one night, I was arguing with someone who was obviously, to me, just as annoying as argumentative as I am, which is hard to come across. And as I was explaining my point, I stuttered. So bad. The next words that came out of that person's mouth were, "Can you speak?" I was in shock. I had never felt this much frustration. I turned to my friends who had faces of shock and disbelief. They, of all people, knew how much this bothered me. It made me so mad. I didn't know what to say to her, so I simply went on with our argument. The same thing happens with people that I meet for the first time, those who don't know that I have a stutter. They would jokingly pull one of the classic "duh," and then once they see my expression, they realize what they did. I don't like being mean to these people who don't know that it's a problem for me. Sometimes I just can't contain it. Most of the time, however, I do let it slide. From the times people would tear me to pieces because of my stuttering, to the times my closest friends would jokingly call me out, stuttering has affected my relationship with others. It has made me develop a hard outer shell to my personality that makes me interact differently. I usually keep my sentences short and to the point with people that I don't know, and this makes it seem like I'm uninterested or distant in conversation. And around my friends, who have been used to it for a while now, I still think about it, and it makes me frustrated with myself. Sometimes I simply go quiet because I'm so fed up with it. So one time, I was driving with Joe through the Rim, and we stopped at Whataburger through the drive-thru. I tried to order the food to the little machine with all the food options on it, but I simply couldn't speak. I stuttered for about 7 seconds straight. Think about it, 7 seconds before I could talk again. After I realized that it had been so long, I stopped. Talking to a drive-thru machine made me so nervous. That about sums up the consequences of having a stutter. I looked at Joe, who had a little, "I know what this is" smirk on his face. He turned to the machine and ordered for us both, and I was so thankful. That little thing saved me so much embarrassment. Joe later made fun of me for it, but I made nothing of it because, well, he is the lesser man. Actually, I was just relieved that I didn't have to speak. I'm lucky to have friends that have pushed me to become a better version of myself. If it wasn't for them, I would not have overcome my nervous breakdowns, which result in a stutter. Whenever I stutter in front of them now, they don't even realize it. They have made it easier to keep my frustration under control, and I'm close to being over it thanks to their support. There have been too many situations where I was too embarrassed to speak. From school to drive-thrus, I'm constantly thinking of places where I would have to interact with people. But recently, I've been starting to realize that everybody has insecurities. I mean, yeah, it's pretty rough when people point them out, but it's part of who we are. I'm willing to bet that everyone here has one or two insecurities, and that's really okay. Trust me, the good people in your life will help you and make you feel good, because it's nothing at all. I'm so thankful for my friends, I'm so thankful for my family, and I'm so thankful that I had people who grew up with me who got used to it. I used to not like making new friends, and I would push people away because I just didn't want to deal with the whole, "Hey, you have a stutter" thing. I've grown okay with it though. An easy way to avoid stuttering is keeping a monotone voice, a clear head, and a carefree mentality when it comes to what people think about my speaking. If it comes out, it comes out. There's no way to control it. But as I look back, all those nerve-wracking situations, like ordering through a drive-thru machine that seemed to drag on forever, don't faze me anymore. Let's be real, things could be worse. Thank you.